Okay, so let me tell you a quick story. So it's back in 2016, and I'm standing in a classroom with three other people. So about a week ago, about a few weeks ago before this moment, I saw that on the school website, right? I was in high school at the time. I saw on the school website that there was going to be a pi memorization competition. So if you don't know what that means, pi is this number in mathematics, right? It's an infinitely long number, right? It's 3.14159 blah 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 till infinity, right? And so this competition was basically the person who could memorize the most digits, the most numbers of pi would win the competition, right? And so back then I was a huge memory nerd. I loved memorizing random stuff. I loved learning the science of memory. I just loved memory. I loved learning, right? About a decade ago, and still now to this day. And so of course I wanted to take on the competition. I was like, look, I have no life anyway. I've got nothing better to do. I may as well do this because by the way, it's a completely useless thing. So I dedicated a good chunk of time, maybe, I don't know, 20 hours, 30 hours, I can't remember, to memorizing pi. And I managed to get, I think, about 200 digits, which looking back is not massive, but it's pretty decent for the short amount of time I had. And so there I am in the classroom doing the competition. And I looked at my competitors, right? It's because we were all going to take turns saying the number. And I looked at my competitors to the right and I noticed something. I noticed I was at the time, I was like maybe 16, 17 years old. I was in like my second last year of high school, maybe last year of high school. These guys that I was competing with were literally kids. They were like, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years younger than me. They were like so short compared to me. I was literally looking down on them. I had literally entered a competition that, older people weren't going to do. It was literally just for kids, right? And I was like, okay, no problem. These kids, maybe they're just geniuses. Maybe they're prepared to, destroy me. I'm kind of scared here. I hope I win this competition. And so we all take turns saying the numbers, and the kids go first. The first kid gets like 20, right? He gets like 20 digits, and I'm like, 20. I'm going to beat this guy. The next guy gets like 15. The third guy gets like 25 or something, and everyone watching is clapping so loudly. And by the way, these kids, their parents were here. So for these kids, this was a huge thing, right? They had come to this competition and their parents were there in the audience, like clapping them on, like they had memorized 25 digits. And so it comes to my turn. And I'm standing there. And for them, it took like 10 seconds for them to do it. And I end up standing there for like a minute, just reciting the 200 digits of pi, right? 3.141592653589793238462, blah, 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 right? And literally, as I'm like standing there for like a minute saying the number, I literally see one of the kids like begin to cry. And at the end, when I finish saying the number, he literally like walks out of the room. He walks to his parents because he's completely just upset. I've just literally destroyed these kids by memorizing this many digits of pi. I literally made a kid cry with this competition. Right now, the reason I'm telling you this, it's not meant to be a flex. I'm just telling you that I have gotten to the point where I'm sort of a memory expert, right? Not like the best memory expert. There are people who can memorize dictionaries fast, but I know the principles of learning, and I can help teach you some principles to help you learn things faster, to memorize faster, how to have a good memory. So I'm going to teach you how to make kids cry. Okay, I'm going to go through some principles here that I've written down, how to get better memory, how to get more exceptional memory. Okay, so I'm going to go through 3 principles here that I think are essential that I'm going to help you with. So things I've memorized in the past, this number pi, so much random geography things. I literally used to just study the map. I've studied 5 different languages in my life to different degrees, Chinese, Spanish, all these things. So I've memorized, tens of thousands of words in foreign languages. I did engineering, so I did a lot of memorization, that kind of thing. So I've memorized a lot of stuff. So these are the 3 principles that I've learned over the years that are very, very important. So the first thing that's absolutely essential for memorization is repetition. Because the thing is, what matters when it comes to memorizing is how many times you repeat the thing. if you repeat the thing enough times, you will memorize anything. For example, let me give you an example. Take any word you know in English. Let's say that the word be, right? The word be in English. If I told you to forget the word be, like I said, I'll give you $1 million if you forget the word be. It's gonna be an impossible task because the word be, assuming English is your first language or a language you're good in, the word be is so ingrained into your memory, you can't forget it. It's because it's been repeated so many times over and over, right? So if you haven't memorized something, it's simply because you haven't repeated it enough times. Now that's the first thing, repetition. But the second part of repetition is it has to be spaced repetition. So let's say you're learning a word in a new language. Let's say you're learning the word be in Spanish. I think it's abeja, right? So you're learning the word abeja in Spanish. It's not enough to just repeat it 1,000 times, like be abeja, be abeja, be abeja, be abeja. You need repetition. Because if you don't know, there's this concept called the memorizing curve, right? The memorization curve. So basically when you first learn something, you forget it fast. But if you, as you're forgetting it, let's say a day later, you look at it again, you do another repetition, then it gets memorized even stronger and you forget it in, like, let's say a couple days. And so the more you space your repetitions out, the more you repeat looking at something, the more you repeat memorizing something, the deeper it gets like drilled into your memory. So for example, about a year ago, I learned the script in Hindi, right? The language Hindi, it has its own script, its own writing system. And I learned it. And the only letters, and I haven't touched it since, but the only letters I really remember are those really frequent letters that I was studying. Everything else I've forgotten. It's simply because I haven't repeated it enough times. But let's take, for example, Russian. I haven't studied Russian in about 8 years, but I still know the alphabet perfectly because I repeated it so many times back in the day. So repetition is literally the most important thing. So I'm going to give you an activity that you can do, which will literally, first of all, it's a lot of fun. Second of all, it'll teach you so much about the science of learning. It'll make you more resilient to failure. It'll make you understand learning better and it'll help you with these principles of memorization. And this hobby, this skill that I want to teach you, I'm not going to teach you how to do it, but juggling, right? So when you learn how to juggle, you learn so much about the art of learning. Because to learn juggling, right? So this is what juggling is, right? I'm probably going to mess it up, right? Juggling is literally, you just throw 3 balls in the air and you just catch them over and over, right? And when I first learned juggling, it took me about 3 hours. But I have repeated this so many times that I can literally just do it so easily. I can change the pace, I can do different things. I can do random tricks simply because I've repeated it so many times, right? And so where am I getting at with this? When you first start learning juggling, it's gonna seem impossible. You're gonna be like, I don't know how to do this. It's so hard. But then what happens is after about 3 hours, out of nowhere, it'll click. And you'll go from like struggling to figure out the pattern, like, oh, this is so complicated. I don't know how to do this. I can't coordinate my muscles. To suddenly you're gonna be able to actually sustain the pattern and you're gonna actually be able to just juggle out of nowhere. It's gonna click. And this idea of clicking happens in learning all the time. For example, when I'm learning a foreign language, if I see a word enough times, suddenly the word will click and it'll almost like get ingrained deep into my memory. It's such a good feeling. Maybe you're learning maths and a concept suddenly clicks. So when you repeat something enough times, it clicks into your memory. So juggling is a really good way to learn about the process of learning because at first you suck. You keep trying over and over again. It's like, okay, 1 repetition, oh, I dropped the ball, try again. Another repetition, oh, I dropped the ball, try again. And that's how you learn juggling. You just keep trying again. Like when I learn a new trick, I have to literally just try it over and over again, right? The point is it's all about repetition. And then it gets into your muscle memory. I haven't juggled in months, but it's so deep in my muscle memory that I can do this, right? I'm not as good as I used to be. But that's the first principle, repetition. And the second thing is juggling will teach you about failure. Because when it comes to learning, you're going to fail over and over and over and over again. When you're doing maths, when you're solving problems, you're going to fail a problem. But when you fail, you learn. Failing is a necessary part. They've done so many studies on this. You have to fail to learn. When you get the maths problem wrong, you're not a failure. You've actually learned. You've learned, it teaches you. Failure teaches you, right? It's a necessary part of the process. So when you're learning juggling, if you're sort of a weak-minded person, you're going to try to learn it and you're going to drop the ball. And you're going to be like, oh no, I dropped the ball. And you're going to try again. Oh, I dropped the ball. And you're going to try again. Oh, I dropped the ball. But to learn how to juggle, you have to drop the ball like 300 times. And every time you drop the ball, your brain learns, okay, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And eventually you get to the point where you don't fail. Right? So the point I'm trying to make here is you gotta fail so many times. You need a ton of repetitions. You need a ton of failure. If you're doing flashcards, you're gonna get the flashcards wrong so many times. Right? Like I learned a lot of my vocabulary and languages through Anki, which is a good flashcard system. And you're gonna fail a ton of times. Right? So you gotta fail like 10 times till you've memorized the thing. That's why the second principle I wanna give here is active recall, testing. What that means is you can't simply look at the word over and over again. So let's say you're learning that word abeja, bee in Spanish. It's going to be less effective. That's not a good example because languages are sort of learnt differently. Let's say, for example, you're learning biology. Let me think of let's say you're learning the Krebs cycle. I don't know, the Krebs cycle. It's not enough to just look at the Krebs cycle over and over again with repetition. To memorize better, you need to actually actively recall it. So what that means is to actually take it out of your mind. So let's say, for example, you've got a flashcard. And the front of the flashcard says, like, what's the point of this Krebs cycle, point B or whatever. I don't know about the Krebs cycle. And then you'll think, okay, that point is this. And even if you get it wrong, you're actively recalling. Because if you get it wrong and you look at the answer, your brain goes, okay, he tried to retrieve it and he failed. But now we know the answer. Let's take that answer and let's put it where it was. Right? So active recall is necessary for the memorization process. And juggling will teach you about active recall because you're actually when you attempt to juggle, you're actively recalling. You're not just sitting there watching a guy juggle on YouTube. You're actually there in the action trying to do it. And you're failing over and over again. Every time you drop the ball, that's like getting a flashcard wrong. Every time you make it, that's like, and by the way, the other cool thing about juggling is there's so many tricks you can learn. So this is the standard 3-ball cascade, right? It's just one ball going up at a time. But then you can also learn, let's say, for example, tennis, which is where one ball goes over the top. Or you can learn, for example, what's this one called? The shower, where it's like one goes over the top and one kind of goes across. Then you can actually learn 4 balls and you can learn 5 balls. I've spent a lot of time trying to do 5 balls and it's very, very difficult. It takes a lot of time, right? But where was I? Yep, so repetition, active recall, those are 2 very important principles for memorization. So let me give the example of pi. How did I memorize pi? I just actively recalled the digits as much as I could. Was it the most effective method to learn it? Probably not. But what I would do was I would attempt to recall the first 10 digits. And if I failed, I would look at the answer, try again. Fail, look at the answer, try again. Fail, look at the answer. So repetition and active recall. Now, the final principle I want to give here is a very, very interesting one. Probably one I don't hear a lot. But it's this concept called interleaving. So they've done studies on this. And a really good way to learn subjects is what's called interleaving. So what that means is instead of studying physics for 2 hours and then studying biology for 2 hours, a better approach is actually to interleave them. So do maybe 30 minutes of biology, 30 minutes of physics, 30 minutes of biology, 30 minutes of physics, come back, and you interleave the subjects together. Now, I can't remember the science of this, why it works. One way is because you get spaced repetition, right? You're doing biology here, 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 here. You're spacing it out. But at least in my personal experience, I find when you push hard in a certain subject, you kind of start to slow down. I start to learn physics concepts, and maybe after like 30 minutes, my mind starts to slow down and I want to take a break. And the thing is, instead of taking a break from studying altogether, you just take a break from physics and you go to biology, for example. And it's like you get brand new energy. It's kind of like, you're running and then you sit down. You're running, then you sit down. But if you try to sit down for 6 hours, it's painful. If you try to run for 6 hours, it's painful. But if you interleave them, you can do it. So it's kind of like that. When I go from physics to biology or physics to maths or something, it's like I get new focus. Maybe it's because I'm seeing something novel. Maybe it's because I'm seeing something like that. So how to actually practically apply this? I like to work in short bursts. So I'll do like 20-minute bursts of physics, right? I'll do a couple slides. Then I'll go to another lecture. Then I'll go to a different subject. Then I'll come back to physics. And I do these like short bursts. And then I take short breaks, right? So interleaving, really good principle. In juggling, how to do interleaving. So actually, to be honest, 2022, end of 2022, I was really obsessed with juggling. I had a summer where I spent many hours learning it. And I was learning a bunch of different tricks. I could do 4 balls. I could like juggle random objects. Here's a bee, right? He's flying in the air. And so I was really obsessed with it. And I would apply this interleaving principle. So I would work on one trick for maybe 10 minutes. Then I'd do a different one, then a different one, then a different one. I would do 10 minutes of juggling here, take a break, 10 minutes, take a break, 10 minutes. Oh man, I gotta slow down with this video. But interleaving and working in bursts. So if you're not used to focusing for 90 minutes at a time, right, which is sort of the maximum we can focus, you can focus for shorter periods. Just focus very intensely for 15 minutes, take a short break, come back, study very intensely for 15 minutes, take a short break, etc., etc. So you don't necessarily need to sit down for 2 hours and study. You can like do it in a burst, take a break, do it in a burst. So if you find it difficult to focus for an hour, 2 hours, you find after a while your mind gets distracted, you can't focus, that's fine, that's normal. Work to your ability. Do short sprints, interleave the subjects. So those are the 3 principles I want to give you. But apart from that, see you later. Adios. Goodbye. Goodbye, my friend. Why are you still watching this video? It's been a while since I've done the Mills mess. Okay, how about the half shower? My form is terrible because I haven't done it in a while, but I'm just making excuses at this point. Let me try the shower. So the shower is where like one goes across and then one goes over the top. That one actually takes a while to learn. Anyway, it's time for this video to end. I don't know why you're still watching. I don't know why you're still watching at this point. By the way, this is Javier. He's my plant. I've been taking good care of him. Apparently this plant is very good at purifying the air. So I like to light like candles here. I like to light incense sticks. And this guy will sort of purify the air for me, according to NASA, according to their research. But yeah, see you later.